I'll admit people and go live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Great. I think we are live streaming. Thank you very much to everybody for joining us. I take great pleasure to introduce our speaker and the topic. Topic, as you all see, is effectively managing anxiety during appraisal seasons. It has always been a concern, not only for the person who's going through the appraisal, but also to the person who's on the other side, the manager, right? And it causes a lot of anxiety, heartburn, stress. So we thought might as well listen to a expert on this subject and pick some tips and tricks and how to navigate your life through this. So I have with me Unnati Jhaveri. So she is a seasoned human resource professional, counseling psychologist, nutritionist, and also a jewelry designer. I always ask Unnati, what are you up to now? Because every time I see her donning a different hat, she has a passion for helping others and live fulfilling and purposeful lives. Born and brought up in India, she spent around 2 decades here. Unnati's upbringing was steeped in the culture, warmth, and spirituality here. After spending over 2 decades, she moved to Vancouver, Canada, and had to navigate a significant cultural shift. With a transpersonal foundation and a humanistic and experiential approach to her work, Unnati supports individuals in uncovering patterns and behaviors that are no longer serving them. She holds numerous professional certifications, including dialectal behavior therapy, emotionally focused therapy, and somatic, and is registered therapeutic counselor. Unnati is also a Reiki practitioner and an author and has written 2 books. For yourself and food and feelings. Join Unnati as she brings compassion, empathy, and a non-judgmental heart to help you find your true, authentic self and live your best life. In today's session, she'll be walking you through how to deal with the anxiety that can manifest itself into fear and stress as one deals with the appraisal season. Unnati also works in KelpHR as a consultant and a trainer in our EAP and DEI practice. Without much ado, welcome, Unnati.
Thank you so much, Smita, for such a warm introduction. Yeah, wow, thank you. It was really beautifully, expressed. So thank you for that. So extremely happy to be here, and thank you for this opportunity to begin with. I'm going to straight up go and start our webinar today. So can everybody see my screen? Yeah. Right. Okay, great. So this is going to be a little bit of interaction as well. We're not only going to listen to me because, it's really boring to only just kind of keep speaking. So I'm going to ask everybody to make sure that their chats are handy, because that is something we will be kind of using through this session as well. So to begin with, the main objectives for today and the reason that we're here is to understand the importance of performance appraisal, to learn better tips to manage anxiety, and to also help somebody else who's going through anxiety, because many a times we feel stuck where we feel like we don't know what to do when somebody in front of us is going through anxiety, and we feel like, oh my God, I have no tools to give them. So we'll go through that as well. I'll take any questions or concerns you all may have at the end of the presentation. So we'll just go through it, and please keep your questions, write them, and please keep them. The reason we're doing this session today is to be open to receiving feedback. We have a lot of difficulty in understanding how to receive feedback in a positive manner. So we'll be looking at that. We'll understand a little bit about ourselves through this process, because performance appraisal is a beautiful process to actually get to know yourself a bit better if we look at it from that lens. and also to equip ourselves to get some sort of tools and resources that where we can manage anxiety in a better way, right? So that is the reason we're doing these sessions. The first and foremost thing is, what is appraisals? And we all know that, but I'm just kind of running through this a little briefly and quickly. Is performance appraisal is basically a collaboration where you set goals with either your manager or your mentor or somebody you kind of look up to, and they help you to carve out what you need to kind of learn or go through in terms to achieve your goals, understanding your ability, and also helping you to create targets that are achievable, and coming out with a fair outcome. So here we normally in HR, we talk about SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So that is something we tend to look at when we're looking at performance appraisal. So through this presentation, we'll be talking about performance appraisal from the manager point of view and also from the employee point of view. So what is the purpose of performance appraisal? So there are various, reasons why an organization would conduct a performance appraisal. So it kind of brings in the concept of accountability, because you have somebody who you're kind of dipping into to understand your goals, where you're at on your journey, things like that. We also do it because of growth. It helps to actually, polish you. It helps you to understand what true development means. It's a way for organizations to recognize people. Performance appraisal, so generally goals are the way they are kind of catered to is in alignment with your organizational objectives. So it helps to keep those two things in alignment. And it helps because different people from different cultures come together to actually, work together, which is also a fantastic way of coming together and understanding people from different backgrounds and different cultures. Now, this is for the organization, but when we look at our personal reasons, so what is the purpose of performance appraisal from my standpoint? For example, as an employee, one of the things it does is it gives us a path. It gives us a journey where we can now step, and each step that we take is towards the final destination, which is your goal. So it helps to do that. It also helps to get to know yourself a bit better, because in the life that we live today, it's a very fast-paced life. There is no time to do any sort of internal engineering work, or you're not looking at internally what is going on. So performance appraisal is a place where it pauses you. It gives you a pause so that you can now understand what's really going on, check in with yourself, and move forward, right? So these are some benefits that even the employee can look at performance appraisal. So my quick question to everybody who's listening is, what are common feelings that come up for most people during appraisal? So you all can quickly write your answers over on the chat, and hopefully I'll be able to see them. I don't know. I'm not able to see the chat. Is there a reason for that? Oh, there. Okay. So I can see. Would it be, what is the way I have worked throughout the year? Would it be as expected? Would it be fair? Correct. Is there, so Priya has said, I hope I am rewarded the way I have worked throughout the year. Absolutely. Alicia says, would it be as expected? Would it be fair? Extremely important point. Are there any other reasons why, what feelings come up? So let's try and talk about feelings, right? So think of it this way: when you're kind of getting into the room to get your performance appraisal, where you have the meeting in the next 10 minutes, what are the feelings that you encounter? What comes up for you when you're in that moment, when you're just stepping in? Anxiety, absolutely. Okay. I hope all goes well. Yeah, big one. Anxiety, I hope all goes well. Thank you for answering. Fear, absolutely. Okay, wonderful. Feedback, yes, because there is something attached to getting feedback. Okay, beautiful. Awesome. So, as you all said, anxiety is something that we all kind of feel just before stepping into that room, which also leads to fears, right? So well said. You all give beautiful answers. And this is what happens with us, because there is this, the way we look at performance is, oh my God, have I done something wrong? Right? Okay, so anxiety leading to various fears. So let's talk about the different fears that we come across when that process is going to begin. Number one, fear of unknown. We as human beings hate it when we don't know what's going to happen. This often happens with my counseling sessions as well. One of the things is the fear of uncertainty, or fear of not knowing what to expect, or what to kind of comprehend, or what to expect. It's very common, and it is something that we all go through. The next is fear of failure. Oh my God, what if I get negative feedback? What happens then? What if I was thinking that, I will get additional responsibilities, or I'm working towards a promotion and I may not get that? So that happens. The next is fear of feedback. This is a really important piece, because if you look at it from a psychology perspective, feedback has a very deep meaning for a lot of people, because maybe in school or in college or at home, feedback equalizes to I have done something wrong. So when we hear the word feedback, it takes us into that memory. So that's why there's this fear of feedback. Fear of letting people down. It could be your family, it could be yourself, it could be your colleagues. Fear of how others will perceive me. So we have this, image that we've created, and I don't want anything to spoil that. Fear of not keeping up to a certain image, right? So these are the different kinds of fears we tend to encounter when we hear the word appraisals or we hear feedback, right? Now, these fears and these anxieties also have a huge impact on our body, which we don't see because it's, it's an invisible thing, right? So we don't tend to see, or we don't tend to understand that. So let me just take you through this quickly, what it does to your body. Fear causes 90% of all the illnesses, right? So when we're in that panicky mode, anxiety, and when there's consistently we're feeling anxious, consistently we're feeling fearful, it leads to some sort of illness. It affects the reproductive system, so your digestion, it affects your kidneys, your adrenals. It affects the gut lining, leading to colon problems, right? It reduces your appetite. There are lots of people, when there is like a submission, or when they are, say doing public speaking, or if there is performance appraisal, leading up to it, you feel, oh my God, I'm not hungry, I don't feel like eating. There's another opposition of that too, where people feel very hungry. You tend to crave a lot of sugary food, a lot of carbs. Carbs are not bad, they're a fuel for our body, but in excess I'm talking about, or anything that is white, so bread or pasta or anything that is an unhealthy snack. Fear drives you to more addictions, because when fear is something that is suppressed and within me, and when I don't know how to express it, it has to take some form or shape. And usually that form or shape would be in maybe addictions, or creating a habit that may not be in alignment with who I am, or which may not be healthy for me. And most importantly, it is these fears which cause anxiety. So there's a very clear connection between anxiety and fears. Right? Now, what does anxiety and stress do to the body? We've understood what it affects, right? The entire system. But what does it do exactly? So think of it this way. We have our kidneys, and above that, there is something called the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidney. the minute we tend to feel fearful, so there are about 6 stimulants. When we intake that, the body releases a hormone called cortisol. So the 6 stimulants are tea, coffee, alcohol, sugar, stress or fear, anxiety, or drugs or things like that. When you tend to have these, the body immediately signals the adrenal glands to pump out cortisol, which is a stress hormone. When this hormone is pumped out, we need cortisol in a balanced form for us to survive, but we don't need it in too excess or too little, right? We need it in a balanced form. When there is constant stress, when there is constant anxiety, there is more pumping out of cortisol, which increases the sugar in your bloodstream. Now, the function of cortisol is to increase the sugar in your bloodstream, but in balanced quantities. When it keeps doing that, it will pump you to have more sugars and more unhealthy food. The more it becomes a cycle. So the more cortisol, the more you feel like eating that, and that leads to excessive cortisol, excessive sugar cravings. And excess sugar in the body affects your brain functioning. It leads to inflammation. It slows your metabolism. So your focus levels, your interest levels, everything starts getting affected. So stress, this is how it actually works, and this is what happens in our body. So it's really important to understand what it does internally, because that is not something we're privy to, right? Okay, moving forward. So quickly on the chat, from 0 to 90, so this is called like a distress thermometer. So if you see from 0 is totally relaxed state to 100 is extreme high anxiety. Which number do you think you resonate with? So on this scale of 0 to 100, usually where do you stand in terms of anxiety? So I would love for everybody to quickly put their numbers on the chat, and let's see where most of the people feel. 80, wow, that's high. Thank you for being honest. Okay, so we're waiting for a few people to kind of write. Which numbers, where do you all see yourself from 0 to 100? 60, okay, not bad, okay. Which is moderate to strong. 50, 70, wow, okay. 70, okay, wow. So we're getting all the below, above 50. The numbers are all above 50, 60. So what we are dealing with is a lot of stress in our daily life, correct? It could be related to performance appraisal. It could be related to other aspects of your life as well. But this is where you're, kind of operating from on a daily basis. 90, wow, so these are high numbers, right? Okay, thank you for being honest and transparent about this. So now that we know where we are on this thermometer, we all understand we need to do something about it, correct? So now let's move into what can be done about this. Now, how do we deal with this anxiety? Okay, so I've picked up 4 things which are most common, not only in performance appraisal issues, but also generally in life. So let's just kind of see how we can deal with these 4 aspects. So anxiety due to the unknown, which is uncertainty. In terms of performance appraisal, what one can do is have regular meetings with your manager so you know where you stand, instead of having that one-off meeting where everything is poured out. If you are a little prepared, it becomes easier for you, right? Even in life, the same principle applies. If you can prepare a little bit, maybe not too much, but at least be in touch. Maybe sometimes your manager is very busy, but you can, prompt and say, hey, can you give me like a quick heads up? How am I doing? What are you thinking about it? So you just even get few words from your manager, which helps you to know which track are you on. Second one is anxiety of failing. Failing is a huge, huge piece, and I can have a whole another webinar on that. But let's look at, failing is, as we all know, is the only way to to growth, or is the only way to move forward in life, right? Without making mistakes, we're never going to learn. But that's a very old way of, and that's one way of thinking, but it doesn't help when I'm feeling like it. So the one thing that I've understood, and I do this with a lot of my clients, is choosing another word for failure. So for example, if I tell you, if someone tells me, oh, we have rejected you, and if I replace the word rejection with the word response, my entire being, my entire anxiety calms down. Some words come with very high sort of vibration, which is very heavy vibration. So sometimes replacing these words can actually help to feel a little more calmer. So for example, instead of me thinking, oh, they rejected me, I can say, oh, that was their response, and it doesn't align with me, my response. It makes a big difference in the way I look at it. So on the chat, if you all can give me quick ideas, what do you think we can replace the word failure with? Is there a better way or a better word which will help us? Possibility. Beautiful, Priya. Thank you. Opportunity. Exactly. Beautiful. So when we replace the word, it doesn't feel as daunting or as overwhelming. Wonderful. Thank you for that, Priya. Moving to anxiety related to feedback. Now, as I said before, feedback for many people goes back into some sort of, maybe there is some sort of experiences attached to it, where if somebody says feedback, you're automatically thinking of, oh, what did I do wrong? So we need to learn to change the idea of feedback. Feedback is something to do with your professional life. It has nothing to do with you as a person. It is something to do with the skill set that you existingly have or you can acquire. It has nothing to do with who you are as an individual. If we can make that distinguish, if we can keep that in our minds, it makes it easier to deal with feedback. The last thing is anxiety related to what others will think. The one thing, we all have this, that what will somebody think about me, or my colleagues, or even my manager, or even my boss, or what will they think about me? One thing is in life I've learned is there are certain things that are out of my control. So how somebody thinks about me is out of my control. But what is in my control is what I can do. So it's about trying to shift your focus from what you can't control to what you can control. Also, the other thing is to remind yourself of your strengths. The thing is, if I tell you there is a whiteboard and there is a small black dot on the whiteboard, and I ask people, what do you see on the whiteboard? Most people will answer the black dot. We tend not to see the entire white space, which has nothing, so the focus goes on the black dot. This is how we have also learned to respond to ourselves. We will always look at the negative first instead of understanding and appreciating the positives in ourselves. So when it comes to my strengths, sometimes when, I ask people, list out your strengths, it takes them so long to list the strengths out. But when I say, okay, things that you don't like about yourself, there are like 10 things, 15 things that people kind of write very quickly, because we have learned to focus on that and not our strengths. This is a change in perspective. This is something we have to train ourselves. This is not something that comes with being born as a human being. It's like a skill we need to kind of adapt to and acquire. So it's an everyday practice where you're trying to focus more on the strengths as opposed to anything in opposition. Okay, moving. So now taking a new perspective towards performance appraisal and the anxiety that gets created with that, right? Remind yourself of the reality that this is only feedback and not a personal attack on you. Very important to distinguish between the two. It's extremely important. Look at it as an opportunity for you to learn more about self and grow. you'll get very few points in your life where you will get some space or room to actually introspect and understand, oh, okay, can I do this in this way rather than this, because maybe this is more helpful for me. Look at it as a chance to explore and discover more about you. Take a pause. We're very quick in our life. If somebody tells me something, I'm very quick to make it personal. Take a pause. Before you kind of create your own, in your mind, you jump to any conclusions, just reflect on the feedback before making it your own. Have a mindset of a student who is eager to learn. One thing, there was some interview that I saw, and there was this one lady who was asked the question that, how can one never grow old? And she gave a beautiful answer, and she said to have a student mindset, which is that of learning. If I have a mindset of learning, I will never take something to my heart. I will be able to understand and say, okay, I need to learn from this. Keep a curious attitude towards yourself. Because if I don't keep a curious attitude, how am I going to grow? I'll be stagnant. Where I am 15 days back or 15 years back, I'll still be there only. We need to create or cultivate that sort of a mindset. Be a listener before you jump into any sort of conclusions. So take your time, listen to yourself, suss the information, reflect, and then make that choice, right? Okay. Now, this was more from the employee standpoint, a little few tips from the manager standpoint as well. Before you get into a meeting, which is conducting any sort of appraisals, please do your homework before you start your meeting. Understand the employee, the recent events in the employee's life, if you can find out anything, understanding what is going on in their personal life, if they have shared anything, just so that you know how to conduct the appraisal. Be sensitive towards the person sitting in front of you, because there was a time when you were in that same seat. Be empathetic, because, and especially in relationship to culture, we live in a digitized world. We live in a, people have left their houses, they've left their families, they've traveled, they've come to different countries, cities, they come from different cultures. In different cultures, the same thing can mean two different things. So sit and understand before you kind of jump into anything, because what you say in one culture can be viewed very differently in another culture. So be really careful about that. I'll give you a quick example. When I went to Vancouver, you know how in India we tend to fold our hands and stand like this, right? This is how we fold. When I went to Vancouver, it was a very common thing. I would stand like this. Somebody there actually told me that that's a very uninviting way. When you're standing, people are not going to approach you because they think you're not open to them approaching you. So again, different cultures have different contexts. So please be careful while you're kind of conducting an appraisal about that. Be aware of their body language and facial expressions. Extremely, extremely important. Connect. If you feel that somebody is getting restless, if you feel that what you're telling them is not sitting well with them, get a clue from these things, cue it in. Avoid using phrases like, oh, you did this really well, but. We have this, that sandwich where you say something good, then you say something bad, and then you say something good. That's a very old style of dealing with it. And I think people prefer honesty. So instead of, appreciating and then saying that, but, try and change that. The environment that you're doing your appraisals in need to be less stressful. Maybe use aromatherapy. Make sure there is privacy. Make sure people cannot hear, outside your cabin or wherever you're taking your appraisals. Provide regular feedback to avoid surprises. So don't do that once in a year. Maybe you can have a formal appraisal once a year, but try and stay in touch with your team or the people who report to you, to give them at least some words of exchange so they know where they stand. feedback needs to be a balanced approach. You can't only talk about only positives or only negatives. That's not the way. It's meant to be developmental. So understand how to tame yourself, the tonal quality, how you merge your sentences is very, very crucial. Be open to rearranging expectations where necessary. You can have an honest, open conversation. Some people may feel, this is my target and maybe I can't do this, or maybe I can do better. Be open to rearranging those targets. Suggest for the individual to reach out for some professional help. So if you see that it is making a person go into an anxiety or a panic situation and they're not able to take it, offer. We'll come to tips that, the next slide is the tips that you can do when there is somebody going through anxiety. But before that, ask them, offer that sort of professional help when you know that there is something missing in this piece. Avoid giving advice during this time. In fact, have a curious mind as a manager. Okay, you tell me, how can we work this? What can we do here? Do you have any suggestions? That's the sort of inviting language that we need to use during appraisals. Be a listener and someone who can be a support during this time. Very, very crucial. A lot of times when people are speaking, we are already thinking of what we should say next. Hold on, just listen. Take your time to respond. There is no hurry in this, because when you're already preempting what you need to say, you've lost some essence of what they're saying. So be in the present moment. Stay where you're at. Be genuinely interested in the growth of the individual. Don't just do a surface level job, because everything is transparent. People can see through everything. It's not that people won't know. If you're saying one thing and you're feeling one thing, people understand the incongruency. So be open, but be genuine about your approach, right? So the last thing is to come and to understand tips to help someone who is going through anxiety, right? So these are some of the things we do in counseling sessions as well, which are simple, which is something that all of us can do for each other. When you see somebody is feeling anxious, or also at the same time, if you are going through that sort of anxiety. Number one is breathing techniques, right? So simple things, even in our ancient culture, when you talk about yoga, or you talk about pranayam, or you talk about these different anulom vilom, and you talk about these different breathing techniques, it really has some effect on calming your body and your senses and your mind. So simple things like inhale, hold for 3 counts, and then exhale. So this is something we tend to do with our clients as well, and we do it with them. So if you're in that where there are 2 people, and if one person is feeling anxious, you can suggest them this and you can do it with them, right? So you inhale, you hold, and then you exhale. And you do it a bunch of times till they find some sort of grounding that takes place with that. The next thing is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rule, which is a very common thing we do in counseling as well, where in order to just take the person's mind from that one thing that is causing the anxiety, we tend to go into 5 things that you can see right now. So sitting in your chair, just speak out loudly 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can taste, and 1 thing you can smell. This helps the person to kind of come to a little more balanced state, to feel in the present moment, and to be able to start feeling themselves as well. So you just slowly kind of are helping them to divert from that anxiety momentarily to find that sort of calmness for the time being. If there's a possibility to go for a walk, that's something that really helps. Connecting with nature, that always helps. Putting your hand, normally we tend to tell them to rub their hands, and the heat that gets created, you tend to take your hands and to put it at the back of your neck. You can use 1 hand, you can use 2 hands. This really helps because it gives that warmth and support from the back. A lot of people do it on the neck. Some people also put their hand on their back. So you can just put your hand like this open on your back. It just helps to give you that sort of support in that moment. A hug genuinely helps a lot of people, but please ask for permission before hugging. Don't just assume that people are okay with hugs, right? And especially in a work environment, this is something you need to make sure that the person is comfortable. And if they are not, please do not indulge in this at all. Help them to lay their eyes on an object that feels a sense of safety in the room. So this is something this is called orientation. So when you're feeling anxiety, you have already gone into future mode. You're not in the present at all. You have gone on to thinking, oh my God. For example, if I've received, say, negative feedback, I've already gone into thinking, oh my God, what will I tell, say, my parents? What will I tell my colleagues? Oh my God, how will I deal with it? Tomorrow, when I come into work, how will it be? You've already gone into future. It's important for you to bring back the person into the here and now. So for them to just look around in the room and to see maybe an object or a color and to just lay their eyes there, which gives you a sense of warmth. Then you can slowly even ask them, okay, can you feel the chair you're sitting in? Can you feel the soles of your feet touching the ground? These help the people, whoever's going through that anxiety, it helps them to come back into the here and now. Using affirmations, encouraging affirmations as though you can do this. All is well. You can get through this. You will get through this. I know, I have seen you do this and I know you can. I believe in you. Sometimes that helps in the moment. Offering small sips of water, so not chugging water down. Also, the other thing is sometimes if you have a lemon and if you can just squeeze a lemon in somebody's, if they can squeeze it in their own mouth, that also helps. The other important thing, or one of the other techniques, is if you have a bowl of ice cold water, you can help them, or you can tell them to just put their hands in ice cold water, or even their feet in ice cold water. This helps your entire body to suddenly just calm down. So all of these techniques, or most of these techniques, when to do with your senses, has a connection with your nervous system. So this is the somatic work that I tend to do. It's work with your nervous system. So when you feel anxious, or when you feel stressed or fear, your nervous system is either in the flight, fight, or flee mode. So what happens? It's going like this. All of these techniques that we just spoke about is just going to help you to come here. It's just going to help you to stabilize. That's where we need to come. Then in order for us to take the next step. When you're like this, that's not a time to have a conversation. You have to step back, take a moment, come to this, and then take the next steps, right? So these are few tips of how to help somebody going through anxiety, and even for yourself. So that's where I end this presentation. And the most important thing is believing in yourself. You will listen to criticism, you will listen to everything, but always remember to take a pause. Honor yourself, respect yourself, take a pause, understand whether this is working, this is resonating with me, and then take the next step. Don't jump to conclusions. Believe in the power of you. You have what it takes to get through these situations. That's why they are coming to you. So don't feel stuck in any moment. Understand and remind yourself, train yourself to remind yourself of the power that resides in you. Awesome. So great. That's how I end. Time for some quick questions. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them on the chat and hopefully I can answer them. Or if anybody has feedback, or if anyone has anything to say, to share, any sort of takeaways, something that really struck a chord with you, anything, you all can put it in the chat and we can look into that. Thank you. Very useful session. Thank you. We tend to overthink at times. So Priya has this question. We tend to overthink at times about an incident. How can we control this? Yes, very true. So, okay. So when we are overthinking, most of the times it is something that may not have still happened, correct? So if I know, so I'm thinking basically of the worst case scenario, right? So if there is a particular incident, say my child or somebody fell ill or fell sick, I'm going to go into an extreme to overthink and think of the worst case possible. The idea here is to learn to come back to the present. It is understanding what can I do that I can come back in the present moment and not and stop that dialogue that is going on in my mind. So I'm going to give you some few tips of how to come back to the present moment. Two very important things. One is breathing technique. So which I just explained, when you tend to breathe, inhale, hold and exhale, that helps you to come back in alignment and stop that spiraling of that overthinking. The other thing is, try this, Priya, balancing exercises. So if you're trying to balance on one foot, you know how we do this namaste position and we try to balance on one foot. When you do that, if you're thinking of the past or the future, you will never be able to balance. You have to think of, you have to be in the here and now to be able to balance. This is something you have to try and kind of train yourself every single day, so that when the situation arises, you don't fall into the overthinking category. Overthinking is not something that can happen overnight. It's not going to change, my dear, overnight. It's something that I have to work on consistently so that it becomes a muscle memory. So the idea is for me to learn, how can I be in the present moment so that I stop that spiraling. So I'm able to have a control over my thoughts and say stop. The other thing I tend to do is, it's called in CBT, in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's one intervention which is called thought stopping. What we tend to do is, when I'm spiraling, I will actually, suppose I have started with one thought and now I've reached the 100th thought. Even if I catch myself in the 100th thought, I will catch myself and tell stop. And loudly I will say stop. Because when we hear our own selves, it's easier for us rather than just churning something in my mind. So I will actually loudly say stop for me to come into this alignment. Also, wearing a band and snapping the band. So whenever I'm overthinking, if I just snap the band, I will come back into my present moment, right? So that's another, these are quick things that can help for you to stop overthinking. Awesome. Okay, thank you, Priya. Also, the other thing is, if somebody wants to ask questions anonymously,
Here is a question, Unnati, from Ramesh, that I'm not getting full sleep due to a lot of ideas are running in my mind whole night.
Okay. So, couple things for that, Ramesh. Thank you for this question. Couple things, you need to have a bedtime routine. So a sleep routine is very essential for you to get sleep. So maybe before you sleep, 1 hour before, don't use gadgets, right? Maybe two types of teas. So there's chamomile tea and passion fruit tea. Green teas, they help. So because they have something called melatonin in them, which helps to calm the nerves down. So maybe that can help if you take it before sleep. The other thing can help is aromatherapy. So if you like, you can have a diffuser with, say, peppermint oil or lavender oil. Just spray it in the room for some time before you step into the room, and maybe that can help to put you to sleep. Also, the other thing is, if you're having too many thoughts, keep a pen and a pad next to your bedside. Sometimes people create at different hours in their, creativity comes to people at different times. Maybe jotting them down writing it down helps rather than keeping everything in the head. So maybe keep a, writing pad or a journal so that you can put down things rather than it just kind of, going on in your mind. Hopefully that's helpful, Ramesh. Also quick just a thing, if somebody wants to ask any questions anonymously, you can definitely ping the host directly as well. Just that's something as well. So any other questions, any feedback, any concerns for anxiety? Also, one important thing I must mention is if you're feeling a lot of bouts of anxiety and things like that, and it's a little bit consistent and it's a little out of control, please don't feel shy to seek help from a professional, because sometimes, you need that third person perspective. The lives we lead today are very different than what we used to lead 40 years and 50 years back. Sometimes it's important to get that sort of perspective from an unbiased person. So please feel free to reach out to, professionals for help. Alok Nanda is saying aromatherapy really helps to calm oneself and for a good sleep. Absolutely, it does. I'm totally, for it. Nowadays, the other thing that I've seen is come out is roll-ons. So there are these different aromatherapy roll-ons with different oils, which can actually help, and they're for different, like for digestion, for stress, for headache, and you can just put them, it's a roll-on you can keep in your bag. It's really helpful. So that is also something that one can dip into. Any other questions, any concerns, anything at all? So we have a software that evaluates the performance, and I get 100% every time and over 100 times. But yeah, that is true. So couple of things in this, right? Couple of factors. One is when there's a difference in obviously a software as opposed to a person. Obviously, it's very important to distinguish and be open to both, in the sense of, because a software there's an algorithm, it's following an algorithm, and it's laying the answers based on that algorithm or a particular program. A human being is obviously somewhere where they're seeing you on a day-to-day basis. They're seeing your interactions. They're seeing the way you deal with things. So there is obviously feedback. Now, the thing is that makes me angry at times is something that needs to be worked on, right? Because what is it that the manager is telling you that is not sitting well with you? Is there more to it? What is it that you're feeling? Maybe if they're giving you some feedback that you're not able to, or you didn't want to hear, what is the reaction? So it's a little introspective, this question, where you need to understand and ask yourself that what is it that is making you angry that the manager is saying, because it's definitely not what the software is telling you. So when there is feedback where you need to maybe polish yourself a little, where you can do a little better, where sometimes some people are able to see your potential that you may not be able to see. So they're pushing you. They're trying to push you so that you can do better. Is that not sitting well with you? So what is it that is actually making you angry? Because maybe it's for your betterment. So sometimes it's also about changing your lens, no? Sometimes it happens, the person who's giving you feedback, you've already made some assumptions about that person. So when the feedback comes from that particular person, it doesn't sit well with you. So it's a lot of introspection on what can be done in those kind of situations. Hopefully, did that make sense, Omar? Do I have to ask myself every time, is boss always right, you mean? No, I think it's very important to check in with yourself. It's not about right and wrong. It's about understanding when somebody tells you something, how can I make it work for myself? So if somebody tells you something and it doesn't sit with you, you go back home, you take a pause, and it doesn't sit well with you, go have another discussion with the person that, hey, you know what? I thought about this and this is what I'm feeling, but I feel you're feeling something different. Can we have a chat about it? Because sometimes when people say certain things to us, we get so stuck with the words that they have used or a particular style that the sentence has been formed that we don't understand the depth of that. So when I go back home and when I'm sitting and when I'm thinking about it, I may feel like, oh, this is not true about me. No problem. Go back. It's not about right or wrong. You know, we have this concept where human beings, everything we put in right and wrong, it's about how can I polish myself? How do I use this so that I can do better? That is the understanding. It's not about right and wrong, because if you put it in the context of right and wrong, you will always want to be right. Because as human beings, we want to be right, because our society has made it such that if we are not right, then we've gone through a lot of backlash. So it's very important for me to be right. So don't put this in the context of right and wrong. Put it in a context of, okay, if I have checked in, if it's not resonating with me, can I have another conversation to understand more? Maybe y'all were not on the same page, right? So it's just another layer of introspection. No, I'm not saying that you have anger management issues, not at all. But I don't think, we look at anger as a really, really like horrible thing. No, I think it's a human emotion and it's a very normal thing. Of course, we have to learn how to deal with it and we have to learn not to harm anybody through that. Absolutely, yes. But it's a very natural emotion and you don't have to be categorized bad or good based on that, because everyone feels anger at some point in their life due to different situations, due to different experiences. It's very normal. So we don't have to, categorize it as a bad thing. Yes, but we do have to learn how to deal with it. That's important. And we have to learn to understand what is underneath it. Because anger is a outcome of something that is trigger. There's a trigger. And anger is an outcome of it. So what are my triggers? What is it that I'm feeling that causes the anger? That's what we need to look into. Awesome. Crying very frequently at smallest things and unable to calm down. How do I control that? Why does that happen? Okay, so there are a couple of things. Firstly, I would, as a nutritionist, sometimes the first thing is to understand, to check your vital levels, to check your, get yourself checked in terms of your regular blood levels and your vitamins and things, because sometimes when our hormones are imbalanced or we're not getting a particular nutrient, we tend to feel like this, right? So that is the first thing I would go towards, is to check. Then I would try to understand, is there some sort of incident that has happened in the recent times or even before, which is cropping up again? So sometimes unhealed emotions from the past can crop up again because they have not been dealt with, which causes anxiety, stress, fear, disappointment. You feel emotional, you feel vulnerable, you want to cry. So it could be a lot of different factors, but I would definitely tell people, for whoever this is happening consistently, number one is check your vitals. Second of all is check in with somebody who you trust, so that you can actually maybe talk about it. Even if it's not therapy, it could be somebody you trust, so that you can find a solution. So I think those are the things that you can try. Most welcome. Thank you. So Alok Nanda is saying, thank you for this very insightful session. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Any other questions, concerns, anything?
I think, Unnati, we can close the call. It was a
Okay.
very insightful conversation. I'm
Awesome.
sure they can send in the questions. I have learned few tips and I'm going to start applying them. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And it was lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.